Thank you for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe and share this episode. My guest today is an entrepreneur philosopher, Sid Mohasseb. He's a published author, theory entrepreneur, investor, professor, and public speaker. Thank you for joining me today, Sid.
Thank you for having me, John. It's a pleasure.
Well, it's an honor because I really am intrigued by your journey. And that's what piqued my interest to have you on this episode. Can you share with our listeners and audience members how you got to where you are? Maybe share some of the backstory, your journey, so people get a handle as how you became who you are.
Sure, I can certainly try. My life, if you would, has been filled with different eras, if that makes sense. So I came to United States as an immigrant when I was about 16 years old. I came by myself and went to school. Uh, and uh, and then I started my first business when I was in college. Uh, it was an interesting business about facsimile, which most people may not know what it is now. That's a fax machine, and creating a service. And the idea wasn't originally mine. It was a company called Flying Tigers that hired myself and a friend of mine for a summer training, if you would, internship. And then they went broke, and we took the same idea that needed about $200 million and started it with uh, about $8,000 or $9,000. Uh, and that was my first business. After I sold that to my partners, I started as a consultant. So that's, if you would, the first period as a management consultant with a very small firm. I became their partner about 6 years later, their youngest partner, and we grew the firm significantly by hundreds and hundreds of people in a very short span of time. Uh, I think the big takeaway there was that one day one of the partners, after a couple of years, called me into his office and he said, "Sid, something is wrong." And I said, "What's wrong?" He said that consulting firms work off of these utilization hours and how many hours you're billing, how many hours you're working, and that's, every hour is measured against the billability. And he said, "You have a over 100% billable time." And I said, "Well, so?" He says, "Well, you have worked last year 3,000 and I don't know 120 hours in the past year, and that in a year you have 2,080 hours. So you've worked about 9 months extra in a month, in a year. How does that work?" I said, "Well, I like what I'm doing." And so that the hard work pays lesson, if you would. And that's how I became a partner, just working hard. And that was the period that I worked really with a lot of big companies. And I had a boss first who became my partner later on, who gave me tremendous amount of opportunity. He took me as a 25, 26-year old into board meetings with board members at Union Bank and McDonnell Douglas, and it was a tremendous experience. So then, in late '80s, I started my own consulting firm, which gave me a real big lesson. Thinking that I was pretty hot, and I had a closing ratio of about 97%, meaning every time I went to a client, 97% of the time I would walk out with an engagement. I started my own consulting firm, and I had a big client, Mattel Toys, called me the next day and they said, "Hey, we want to give you a project." I said, "This is a piece of cake." And that was the last client I had for about a year and a half after that. I just couldn't get a client. And I realized it wasn't me that was hot. It was everybody that was building me up and positioning me and so forth. And that really gave me the value of the ecosystem, and how important it is. Uh, so during the, if you would, the next decade or so, I got involved in turnaround business and did some consulting as well. And along the way, I met some entrepreneurs and some opportunities, and I started a few software companies, purely serendipity. It wasn't that I was trying to be a software uh, company owner, or anything like that. So the turnaround companies was when you buy a company from a bigger entity and then you try to turn it around and make it positive, and they're generally companies in trouble. So during that decade or so, I started working with startups and in the software side, and turnarounds with mid-sized companies. So the first period of my life, if you would, the first decade or so was really big, huge companies. The second period was mid-sized companies and turnarounds and getting my hands dirty in terms of running things, and so forth. Uh, Towards the end of the 90s, I one of those companies that I had some success. It was called Competitive Knowledge, and at some point it was valued about a capitalization of about $100 million. And then we hit the dot-com era, where everything collapsed. I was lucky enough. I mean, some called me pretty intuitive, pretty having a foresight of some sort, but it wasn't. I think I got lucky by just reading the tea leaves. Uh, I before we really collapsed, I called it and I said this environment is not something that's going to work. So I was able to actually return some money to venture capital folks and so forth. And that was again another period of my life. I started then the third big chunk. I started a company. Actually, we did a carve out, bought a piece of a company in Orange County, and this is when I got a little more experience in international markets, where I opened an office in China, in Hong Kong, had offices in Europe and in the US, and really in the distribution business, worked with thousands of companies around the globe. Uh, so that takes us about 30 years or so. That tells you, I guess I'm aging myself.
Well,
Uh,
that's amazing.
and
I'm gonna drill in, and sorry to cut you off because I know there's a lot of gaps in there, and maybe I'm gonna jump in and maybe
Sure,
ask you,
sure.
where did you originally come from to then immigrate, and eventually did you bring your family over, or was it more for studying? Like, what was your upbringing like?
So I came from Iran,
Okay.
and this was about 2 3 years before the revolution that happened there. And I came to study, and then very quickly we had the revolution there. So my parents couldn't come. I couldn't go. I think the first time I saw my parents after that was about 10 years later when they visited, and basically my friends became my family. I have friends here from 40 some odd years ago that we're really close. We still see each other. That's an unlikely scenario. People don't have that many friends that are that old. We are a group of 10, 15 people that that we're still together and we'll see each other because it was we created essentially a pseudo system, ecosystem, support system that was basically uh, with friends. And the family then came for visit, but they never came to stay. So pretty much I had disconnected, if you would, in a way, in terms of really living in Iran, or having much to do with Iran.
Because
Uh,
I would imagine the culture being completely different, because even myself, my parents came from Vietnam.
yeah.
And I know a lot of friends from Iran that came to Canada. That's where I live right now. And just that nuance of how things work, how the school system, the public system, the private sector works. Did your parents give you that strong foundation to prepare you for the American way of living? Or did you have to engulf yourself while you were here at an early age?
I think my parents gave me a foundation that was I would call it a mental foundation.
Okay.
Not necessarily. I didn't speak that much English when I came, and I came because I decided to come at 15 years old. I went to the hospital because I had some stomach pain, and I was reading a lot of magazines and a lot of newspapers and stuff like that. And somehow I had the brilliant idea that I have to come to the United States to study. And when I told my parents, they said absolutely not. Particularly because I have a disease called hemophilia, which is a blood disorder. So they were very concerned about that. But um, I think it was the foundation that they provided me mentally, that provided me. Actually, in my latest book, I talk about how that happened and the lessons for it, because I think it was an important lesson for me as well.
Yeah.
So
No, that's great. Like
yeah,
putting yourself out there, like letting people know your perspective is completely different, right? A lot of people don't go through that immigration journey, right? A lot of the Americans or Canadians that live here are second, third generation. So they don't understand what's really going on when you're new to the country, language, culture, and how everything operates and works, right? So you're thrown into this kind of environment, and then you created a network of friends, social circle that you still connected with now. And throughout those years, like why that entrepreneurial bug? Like you could have gone on any direction in terms of college, career, skills, opportunities, but what drove you to push into entrepreneurship?
so I did a podcast with some folks. I did actually a couple with folks that focus on immigrants and how do they come and all that. Um, and and one of the things we talked about, which connects who I am, people call me the entrepreneur philosopher, as you introduced me as well at the beginning. Uh, I fundamentally believe that we are all entrepreneurs, every one of us. We have the talent. And again, I'll go through great lengths in my book, in my last book, You Are Not Them, to explain why I make that claim. Uh, the entrepreneurship is about taking what you have, your situation, whatever that situation is, whatever your origins are, and aiming, trying to change that with a better situation. So you're exchanging what you have with something better, knowing that it's not guaranteed. There's a risk. Nothing is guaranteed in life. So all immigrants are particularly active entrepreneurs because they move from where they are, knowing that there's lots of difficulties. And in some folks, in my case, it wasn't as difficult as coming from some countries where kids are under guns and drugs and this and that, and they have to escape tremendous poverty and all of that sort of stuff. But in a lot of cases, people who are immigrants, they are truly exercising their entrepreneurial talent. They take what they have and they want to exchange it with something better, knowing that there is risk. So uh, I believe that we're all entrepreneurs. Now, how do we apply our entrepreneurship is different, and it has to do with different situations. So if we're exchanging, if the definition is exchanging what you have with something better, I would say a mother, a housewife, or somebody who works 16 hours and collects a paycheck and then brings that paycheck home in order to exchange that for a better life for their kids is exercising entrepreneurship within the context of what they are. If somebody is even in a corporate environment, everybody is there is trying to make a better life for themselves. They're trying to move up the ladder. They're trying, and they're also constantly changing their situation with something better. They're exercising that every day at work. If they don't, they can't take a situation they're given and they can't improve it. They're in the business of improving the situation for the customer, for the company, for whatever it is. So they're constantly doing that. But in the corporate world, you're exchanging all of that in order to get a better paycheck, in order to move the corporate ladder, get a better title. So we have people that are on either extreme of things. You have people who are, what I say, in denial. So you look at Elon Musk and say, "Ooh, if this guy is an entrepreneur, then sure as hell I'm not." So you're in denial. Then you have people who are hustlers, if you would, weekend entrepreneurs. They're trying to do something because they don't quite trust themselves. They don't trust in their abilities, and they're trying to be risk averse. Then you have, the corporate entrepreneurs, and then you have some folks on the ultimate end of the spectrum. I call misguided. They think fast talking and bamboozling others is about entrepreneurship. No, that's being crooked. So the talent we all have, how we apply it is different. Now, if you look at back to my life and what you asked, why did I pick to be an entrepreneur? Well, I was an entrepreneur. I just started exercising it, and I did it in different environments, if you can notice. So I did it while I was in college, starting that business. Then I did it when I got into a company as a consultant. So I was a consultant. I was working somewhere, but by exchanging my hours, my time, my effort, I tried to improve myself and became a partner. And then I was trying to exchange my knowledge and capabilities in turnaround situations to turn companies around and exchange that with more success or more money or whatever you want. So if you look at everything that I've done, they're not the same, but it's about an exchange. So there's an entrepreneurship element in it. And maybe my risk tolerance is a little bit higher. Maybe my ability to see things sometimes too early is different than others. But we all have different talents, and we have come from different origins. As long as we find our own authentic way, and that's what all this thing they call me entrepreneurship philosopher. That's the reason. The reason is I'm saying you have to find your own personal entrepreneurial philosophy in order to be successful. Because, John, let's face it, you and I are not Steve Jobs. About 7 other billion people on the face of the earth. We're not Bill Gates. We're not Elon Musk. We're not Warren Buffett. We're different than them. Guess what? They're all different from each other. They have a different risk profile, they have a different personality, they have a different approach of life, they have a different set of priorities. We're all different. The reason one group of people, as entrepreneurs in business or in corporate, however you want to define them, are successful is because they are authentic. They are, they have an ability to take who they are and improve it and make a better version of themselves. So I always say that you're both the artist, all of us. We are the artist and we are the art. We're both Michelangelo and the Sistine Chapel. We're both the Mona Lisa and Da Vinci. We're the sculptor and the sculpture. The question is, how do we shape ourselves and how do we evolve ourselves over time? Because it's not life is not a picture; it's a movie. And some people look for how to's in terms of let's get a how to book off of off the shelf, and let's follow this and we're going to be successful. That doesn't work. It doesn't work because life is not like an IKEA that you go and buy a bookcase and then look at the how to's and you put it together. There's so many different variables. I come from a different place, you come from a different place. My family is wealthy, yours is not. I am white, you're black. I am I come from a particular family that has a different value for education. You come of a, working class family. I'm married to this person, have two kids, you have no kids. There are so many different variables that makes you and I completely different, that makes everybody different. So the question is, how do we take those differences on our own and we create our own version, our own philosophy, and how we then evolve that, because the world is evolving and changing.
Totally. So growing up, I wanted to ask you, did you envision yourself being where you're at today? Like, what was your kind of dream job, your dream life? What did you want to become when you were younger, your younger self?
It may sound silly because I know a lot of folks, particularly those who are successful, uh, have routines, and they have early visions, and they have a dream that they're. I really didn't. I'm actually against this idea of vision board, and usually people push back at me. You know what these vision boards are? You put who you want to be on a page, on a board of some sort, and then you look at it and you say, well, if I'm 12 years old or 20 years old and I put a vision board together, I'm doing it based on my knowledge, based on my experience, based on who I am as a 20-year-old. So why does that make a good vision? It doesn't make a good vision. What is my judgment at 20-year-old in terms of who I want to be? The idea is, can I evolve who I want to be and take opportunities as they come? Now, if you look, I've done a lot of different things, and I wouldn't change it. I think I have tried. I've failed many times, succeeded many, but I've tried to be open to opportunities. Uh, and I say, and you again, you would see from the way I look at things. For example, I look at risk and entrepreneurship. I say entrepreneurs are not risk takers; they are risk navigators. That means risk takers are in Las Vegas. You go and you throw the dice and see what happens. That's risk taking. Part of it has to do with luck, but risk navigators are navigating risk based on an understanding and knowledge of situations, and looking at the probabilities of which path is better. So, uh, so if you're closed to looking at opportunities ahead of you, you're not navigating risk, you're sticking with the simplest thing that's possible, and as a result you're compromising your future. Yes, we could all lock our doors in our room and do nothing and hope somebody would give us a dish of food, and we have a restroom, and that's all we need. Well, risk is minimized, but that is not life. That is not growth. That's not prosperity. Yes, it is a life, but it's not. It doesn't provide you prosperity. The other thing I believe, and I've believed this from young age, is this idea of not leaving change to chance. Change happens. Change is good. Actually, I say change is our best friend. Imagine this, John. If there was no change, zero change, it was always spring, always 72 degrees, always you would have hamburgers for lunch. If you have a kid, that kid is always 5 years old, never grows, never gets married, never goes to college, never does anything. And you're exactly the same place that you have always been. You do this podcast and you do it every day, the same way, the same place, because there is no change. The questions are the same, the answers are the same. Without change, there wouldn't be any choice. There wouldn't be any choice. We can't, if there's no change, we can't choose between A and B. There wouldn't be any prosperity. There wouldn't be any love. There wouldn't be any progress. There wouldn't be any caring. There wouldn't be nothing. No careers. So change is good. The question is, how do we embrace that change? How do we embrace the choices and evaluate the choices that it offers us? And that, I believe, is the essence of entrepreneurship, to evaluate the choices, to even ignite more change so we have more choices. And that's how prosperity, I think, becomes crystallized. And it's not for everybody, it's not the same. For me, it's may been different than many others. And I've gone from running companies to being consultant to Fortune 500 CEOs to to writing books to being an investor. I've made lots of investments in early stage companies. Um, so for me, the choice has been as they've come. I've tried to embrace them, and that's what I suggest to folks in terms of realizing who they are, how to navigate risk as a pilot, because pilots navigate risk every day. Um, but there are different kind of pilots. There are commercial pilots. They go from point A to point B. They have a checklist. They check, 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 get on the plane and fly. And then you have the fighter jet pilots who are faced with enemies, throwing things at you, and like a startup, not maybe running up out of fuel, no money, and and a different set of risks that they face. So depending on how you define who you are and how you navigate risk, that's how you would find the different opportunities that would come your way.
Those are great concepts and perspective that you brought up. I wanted to ask you because it seems like you have a wealth of knowledge, years of experience, and you've worked with thousands of, or if not hundreds of other entrepreneurs, business owners through consulting and some of the largest companies. What kind of synergies are there in people's intention? Because what I hear from you is yes, there's risk, yes, there's action, yes, there's curiosity, yes, there's people that ignite and move forward, grow, right? And that's the whole premise of I feel a lot of people are stagnant because they're so risk averse, right? So they get a steady paycheck, or they want to stay with the company because of that holiday of 3 weeks or pension or whatever it is, right? However, more risk averse you are, then there's more opportunities. And the more challenges and harder it is, then there's also a lot of risk. Like there's failure that's a potential, but there's also a huge abundance of growth and success that may come out of it. What were some of the things that you can gauge from all these interactions that you may would like to share with some of the audience members? Because it seems like you've worked with so many of them.
I have worked with many. So let me expand on. You had a few ideas there that's worth exploring. First, let's take the person that you say he or she is at a job and is likes the security, likes the vacation, likes the. So when I say all of us are entrepreneurs and we're exchanging something for other, that person is also an entrepreneur, but he or she has defined the better in a different way. So if you may define better as you have a better house and more money, and I may define better as having more time with my kids. So I'm exchanging what I have, which is my time, my resource, my mind, my all of who I am, and I go to work and I spend 8 hours at that in order to exchange what I have with something better, being able to at 5 o'clock go to a baseball game with my kid. So I'm entrepreneurial, except I don't realize that I'm entrepreneurial. I don't realize that I have done that. And what is the risk? The risk is, well, I may not be able to pay for my kid to go to Harvard. The risk is I may not be able to pay for, I don't know, tutors that would get my kid to Harvard. I may not realize that I can't have a bigger house, or I may not realize it. But if I realize it and I'm consciously exchanging that, that's purely entrepreneurial. That's navigating the risk, knowing what the exchanges are. So, for example, I say Martin Luther King or even Mother Teresa, they were, Gandhi was an entrepreneur. They exchanged what they have with something they believed in. So, and they believed that that's the right thing to do, knowing that there is some risk. There's risk to be killed. There is risk for people not to be. There is a risk. So the risk changes in terms of context, and the benefits change in terms of context, but the exchange is there for all of us. Now, you said, in all the people that I have seen, do I see a pattern of uh, of who is more successful? Who and I have to say something that may sound a little silly, but it's those who are authentic, those who are not a copy, those who realize that they are not them. It's not that they're fearless, no. It's not that they don't get nervous. No. It's not that they don't make mistakes. No. It's not that they are super intelligent or super accomplished academically. No. It's not that they're hustlers and they work too hard, because that doesn't, just working hard doesn't necessarily translates into results. It's just, we have we can have a mouse and go around running around, and then they're working hard, but that doesn't necessarily produce any results. So I think being authentic and having their own philosophy of approaching things in a consistent manner is a key. So let me expand that a little bit. So if you have a way of looking at life, you have a way of dealing with situations that is your own, then as choices come your way, as you face situations, that those choices go through the filter of your mindset. And because of that, you choose A versus B. We all do that. Doesn't matter if you go on the street, you want to make a left turn or a right turn. I'll give you an example. My wife always likes to go the same way. So if we go to her mom's place, we always take the same place. Me, I take different roads. I don't like to go the same place the same way. That's her choice. That's mine. We all make choices as we do that. So the key is that what is authentic, if you have your own entrepreneurial philosophy, what becomes authentic is the way you look at choices, and you make choice A versus choice B. But then, because you have a system of mindset, your choices are consistent. They are consistent, and they connect from where you think about something, you plan, you strategize, to how you do things, to how you communicate things with others. So all of that becomes consistent. And guess what? Consistent, focused things get to results faster. So by having a systematic way of having these things, from planning all the way to execution and doing, you just become more effective because you have a consistent way of looking at challenges and situations. Now, the thing when I talk about entrepreneurial philosophy, it's very different than your beliefs. Your beliefs is a part of this. So let me give you an example. I do believe that all people are equal. All people are equal. But when I'm running a company, all my employees are not equal. Someone is contributing more, someone is contributing less. Someone is in the warehouse, somebody is in the R&D department, somebody is in public relations, somebody is in customer service, somebody is working 16 hours a day, somebody is goofing off 2 hours a week. So they're not the same. So from a belief perspective, I do believe all people are equal. But from an entrepreneurial philosophy perspective, I have to realize the contribution of people are different. Now, when when we talk about entrepreneurial philosophy and what we have, it's not constant, it's not fixed. It's an evolving factor, because for us to remain relevant to the world, we have to change. So consider Kodak, consider Fujifilm, and they rejected using digital films. Okay, then they're gone. Consider BlackBerry as a cell phone, which was, everybody at some point had BlackBerry. It was the and where are they now? It's just limited market, less than 0.0005% of the market, because they didn't stay relevant. And they didn't stay relevant because they were fixed. They were fixated on who they are and not who they can be. So that journey is the journey of a process. And that kind of goes to my first book that was about the caterpillar's edge. You know, a caterpillar, before it becomes a butterfly, it goes through many stages. And the process is very gooey, it's very messy. It's not like the caterpillar sleeps one night and wakes up a butterfly. Goes through metamorphosis that's very, very complicated. You know, a caterpillar has about 4,000 muscles. You and I have about, as humans, we have about 600 muscles. A caterpillar changes those 4,000 muscles to go from one kind of species completely to another who can fly. So this process takes time, and it's not just overnight, and it's constant. And guess what? When the butterfly is born, one of the first things that the butterfly does is to lay eggs for the next caterpillar. So the circle continues. So this idea that, okay, here's who we are, we're now read 17 books and we're all good, and that doesn't that doesn't make you a true entrepreneur who's always exchanging. And I say practicing entrepreneurs are always an apprentice. They're always learning. They're always looking to exchange what they have with something better. They're not satisfied, and it's not just because of money. They're not satisfied because they think that they deserve more, and they do. They think they deserve more, and they think they can get more, and they can't. So that process is what's common along all those people that you think are the people that I see are successful. They have a mission, they have a cause, they know themselves. They're not afraid of losing, but they're not stupid enough to, to jump into risks without having the knowledge of it. They may get momentarily success by taking, unreasonable risks. Yes, you can get lucky, but if you look at the consistent entrepreneurs that have been successful, they have a way of looking at things themselves. And they leverage their origins and originality, and they have their own unique way of being authentic in their leadership. It's not the same. Not all leaders are born the same, and not our followers are born the same.
Yeah, so I really appreciate that. I know that there were a lot of points there that you mentioned. Can you maybe stipulate some of the biggest mistakes that you made over the years, and maybe share with that how you overcame them, or what did you do differently after you were engulfed in that mistake? Did it lose you a lot of money, set you back a couple years, tarnish some relationships? Like, what were some of the biggest failures and mistakes, and what have you learned from since then?
So let me separate from a definition perspective. I think a mistake is when you do something, the outcome is unpleasant, but you don't learn from it. That's a mistake. Uh, a failure is when something didn't work and you've turned it into a learning experience. So I've tried to avoid mistakes, if that makes sense. But I'll give you some. I gave you one when I started in my background. When I left the consulting firm in the 80s and started my own firm, I thought that I was all that. I thought, this all the success that I had as a partner of that old consulting firm was all mine. It wasn't. It was because everybody else was supporting me. I had ignored the power of the ecosystem, the power of others. So this has become one of the things that I have carried my entire life. I am not the one who's doing it. I am just the one element in the cog here. Sometimes I'm the lead, sometimes I'm the back, but it's not me. It's everybody else that's in the process. Unless I want to build something, I want to think about something, design something, manufacture something, build it, market it, and sell it to myself, and then pay for it myself and use it myself. I need somebody else. I need somebody to help me in designing it. I need somebody to help me in making it. I need somebody to buy it. So The power of ecosystem is one massive learning over time. Uh, Another thing that I can think of in terms of uh, failures that have turned into successes or learnings, if you would. I have a tendency of being ahead of market. It's my fault, and I have learned that I have pushed that sometimes to my own detriment. Uh, if the market is not ready for who you are, what you do, the market is not ready. It's not how brilliant it is; it's how relevant you are to acceptance. So I've had ideas. Uh, I mentioned one, the competitive knowledge one, that in the dot-com era didn't work. That was about aggregating data over the net and creating KPIs that goes across the supply chain. About 30 years later, people are starting to do it now. The time was wrong then. It, the environment wasn't there. The people weren't thinking that way. It was a good idea, but it wasn't. So I have learned not to ignore the market signals, not to ignore my environment. I am only as effective when the audience can hear what I'm saying and absorb what I'm saying and act on what I'm saying. I'm not effective and in closed rooms just having ideas. Relevance is important. So those are a couple of things, real life situations that I can share with you.
No, that's great. I love that. Thanks a lot, Sid. Um, One of the things I always want to find out is like, what does success like for you today versus when you were in your 20s, 30s, and 40s? Because it's always a moving target. And it seems like during these lifespan stages in your life, I know it's, personalized to your situation, right? Because you go through, career, family, job, entrepreneur, VC, whatever, startup, speaker, author. There's all these stages. Where do you see your stage today and where do you want to push yourself for the next 10, 20, 30 more years?
So I'm going to ignore the mechanical successes, and this is what I mean. Mechanical successes, if you're a consultant getting a project or two projects or five projects or moving from a manager to a director to a part, those are short-term goals that have to do with careers that all of us have had. And it's, yes, it is considered success if you move from one position to another position. So that could be, I mean, if I'm looking at it as an investor, that could be, well, how many deals did I invest in? How many of them have an exit? How many went IPO? How many failed? Those things are, you know, considered what I call mechanical things in whatever you're doing. If you're working for a company, it's, well, did you get awards for what you did? Were you recognized? Did you get a promotion? Those are mechanical things. Uh, but from a personal perspective, development perspective, I think success has been kind of an evolving thing for me as well. One that has been critical is building trust. That is, if people are trusting me and I'm delivering on that trust, I consider myself successful. Now, that could be in any situation. Again, this goes back to the idea of the ecosystem. This goes back. I am who I am because people trusted me. They trusted me if I was a consultant with what I said. They trusted me as a boss if they were my employees. They trusted me as an investor to listen to me and to work with me, or they trusted me as a professor. When I go to school and I teach, the students have to trust you. So trust is at the core of, I think, one of the key elements that I would call success. Um, the other things, as I am now, I do three things, four things now, as you mentioned, but they're very closely connected. Um, I teach at university. both in the engineering school and the business school at USC, University of Southern California here. Uh, I I write lots of articles. My articles are, often in Time, in Newsweek, in USA Today, in Independent, in Foreign Policy, Startup Nation, all sorts of different publications. I've got cases at Harvard Business Review, cases that are more academic. So there's an academic element to me. There is a writing element. This is as you mentioned. I am an author. I've got my recent book is You Are Not Them, and the previous one I mentioned, The Caterpillar's Edge. They're both bestsellers. They're doing well, and again, it's about, you can see, imparting knowledge of what I've learned to students or via the writing. And then I need to stay as a practitioner. So I make investments in early stage companies, and I stay active as an advisor to select companies. So I'm constantly looking at new ideas, new challenges, so that what I preach is not disconnected with what happens. So if you look at all those three things, my success today is to be able to impart this idea to people. John, you are an entrepreneur. Doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter how much education you have or you don't, doesn't matter if you're poor, you are an entrepreneur. This talent of exchanging something you have for something better is within you. This is my mission, is to tell people and try to provoke them to look at that talent and apply it. Why? Because I believe that our world is changing significantly. I believe that we are at a critical juncture in our life. And when I'm saying not in our life, in human life, this is a period of inflection where we are relying more and more on machines, artificial intelligence, and all that. And regardless of how people are fearful of it, the greed of what tremendous productivity it will bring, it will overcome us, and we will get to a place where lots of AI will be driving our lives. And I believe that it is time for us to evolve to our next stage of being, and that is about how we exchange what we have with something better, and how we define that something better. So I think entrepreneurship is at the cornerstone of the next 50, 60 years of our lives, of how do we become and how do we choose to be creative as opposed to try to fight AI machines and be fearful that they're going to be replacing us. The reason we feel that they're replacing us is because we feel that we don't have the ability to exchange what we have with something better. We believe that this is what we have. The artificial intelligence and the machines are going to come and take over what we have, not realizing that what we have is subject to improvement, and we are the artist, and we are the art, and we can take that and improve it. So that's what I call success. If I have in your show, if I have touched one person, I've succeeded.
That's amazing, Sid. I know you've spent a lot of time here, giving a lot of good insights, value to our listeners. Um, how can some of the listeners get in touch with you, reach out to you if they have any questions, and maybe get them to buy your book, right? The newest one that you have, You Are Not Them.
Yes.
If you don't mind sharing with the audience members the ways.
Sure. So You Are Not Them is on Amazon, and they can get it in both written form or the electronic form. It's called You Are Not Them: The Authentic Entrepreneur's Way. And as I mentioned, it talks about uh, the entrepreneurial philosophy. How do you build it? Change, fear, nervousness, mindset, the idea of being a pilot, and I even use I use a lot of analogies, as you can already see, on how can you be a dancer when it comes to execution, as opposed to how people define life and execution as a fight. So the book is on Amazon, and you can search it under my name, Sid Mohasseb, which is Mohasseb. or the name of the book. And the way to contact me is also through my first name and last name as an email. So it's sid@mohasseb.com, or or you can go to my various sites and places. If you go to mohasseb.com, you'll find some of my links to my articles, uh, links to my speaking engagement activities, my consulting and advisory activities, and so forth. So I'm pretty easy. If you just type in my name, I'm pretty easy to find.
Amazing. Well, I really want to thank you for all the time that you devoted to the show. Do you have any final departing words that you would like to share with the audience members?
Don't leave change to chance.
Take
That's
action.
what I've learned from the early age. Don't leave change to chance.
Great. That's great insight. Thanks a lot again, Sid.
Thank you, John.
Sure. Thank you.